Hey, Chrissy here. I am a landscape architect and the owner of Kismet Design. I am a very process-driven designer, and I love sharing what I do and how I do it with anyone who's interested. Reaching your true potential and achieving your own personal goals will not happen by chance. You have to set your intentions, make a plan, and do the work. Thank you for joining me to nerd out on design. Don't forget to subscribe and to share too. Let's create something great together. It can be a challenge for any small business owner to figure out how to retire or transition to something else. And my guest today has a unique experience coming into the landscape industry, taking over a established business so that owner can look towards retirement. All right, I'm really excited to welcome Rodrigo Frias to the podcast. Rodrigo recently purchased Classic Nursery in Woodinville, Washington. Classic Nursery has been a design build landscape company in business since 1985. Classic has a robust office with multiple designers to keep their crews busy building and maintaining countless gardens throughout Western Washington. Welcome and thank you so much for your time and sharing your knowledge and experience. To get started, Rodrigo, if you would like to tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you into the landscape industry.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chrissy. I'm very excited to kind of have this conversation with you. So personally, I grew up in Mexico to parents of they run a small business, to small business owners in Mexico. I kind of always wanted to kind of work in the U.S., so I did my undergrad and my master's in the U.S. So that's kind of where I kind of just started integrating and migrating here into the U.S. And I have a very diverse, I would say, professional experience. I think at the beginning of my career, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, which is pretty common for 20-something people in their 20s. So I was in a process engineering position first, worked for Dell Computer down in Austin, Round Rock, Texas. Then I went to Mexico and I did some marketing and branding for premium brands. That's when I say, hey, I want to do finance. So I went and pursued my MBA in New Hampshire. And I did 2 years of finance. That's where I learned a lot about just mergers and acquisitions and capital raising and just kind of capital structure for large companies. That was a great experience. It was not a really good fit for my personal situation with a growing family. So then I moved here to the Seattle area, worked for Microsoft for a few years. And after a few years of working there, I decided I want to just run my own business. And why landscaping? I have a saying, like it's like JFK said at some point. We're doing this not because it's easy, but because we thought it was easy. I think he said something like that, right? I don't know if I said it well, but that was kind of the reason. I thought landscaping was a lot easier than I anticipate. I anticipate to be easier than it actually is. But obviously, working in an office setting for most of my career up to that point, I was just looking for a business that I was be able to just be a little bit more outdoor, just being in this office setting, especially in the Seattle area when you get into the winter and you go into the office at night and live and it's the office and it's dark as well. It's just very depressing. So I was looking for something that was a little bit more outdoor and frankly, just I thought it was kind of related to kind of how I grew up with my parents. They have a kitchen cabinet remodeling business. And the process is very similar in many ways, where you go and talk to a customer, understand their needs for design, and then build it, service it, and maintain it. I saw a lot of similarities with landscaping construction. So that's kind of my 2-minute journey.
Okay. Well, and I definitely see the correlation between your parents' business and landscape, although, it obviously a little bit of a different beast, but as you're finding out.
I did learn that over time.
How long has it been now since you purchased the company?
2 years tomorrow,
Oh,
exactly.
well,
March 23rd, March 23 of 2021. That's when I took over Classic about 2 years ago. Yeah,
okay.
time flies. It's been quick.
Nice. Well, congratulations on 2 years. That's exciting.
Thank you.
So, as you took over, what was your process for assessing existing systems and implementing a plan to change or morph those into your own ideal processes into a very well established company?
Yeah. So I think the first step, and it's not that necessarily I did it this way at the beginning. At the beginning, I was just absorbing everything I could, just learning from Alan and Julie and the rest of the team, really trying to understand how this business run. But once I got a little bit more comfortable, my process has been really first understand what the system is trying to accomplish. It's very easy to go in and say, hey, I don't know better. That's how I did it at Microsoft, or that's how I used to do it at Bank of America. Like, but yeah, but those are like trillion-dollar companies, right? And they do it for very different reasons, and they're at a very different scale. So really, the first thing is really understand what it's trying to accomplish, that system in the first place. And then I'm pretty big on just measuring success, rather than have this soft measure of success. That has worked very nicely with me. So every system, I also try to find that measure of success and define what is to have a good system running, for that purpose.
What
Yeah.
are some of the things that you're measuring?
So I mean, for at the beginning, one of the processes I have changed is productivity, which productivity is kind of this thing that just feels very ambiguous, but it really comes down to, hey, how many dollars are we generating per man hour on the job site, right? Rather than having, hey, our calendar is booked, sure it's booked, but are you making enough revenue with it,
Right.
right? That's doesn't it's may feel booked, but it may not be profitable. Booked is not always being profitable until you kind of be able to measure in a way that you can track that very closely. I mean, the others is, in sales, we track proposal volume. We know that as the more proposals we send, the more jobs we're gonna win. I mean, if we only send one proposal a week, yes, you may close 100% of those, but you're capped at one a week. You're not gonna do more, right? So we send 10 and you close half, you'll be doing half, 5 a week, right? So it's always kind of measuring our close rate and then our volume, and that's something I track very closely when it comes to the very beginning of the design journey. Which at the end of the day, we're an organization that our end game is to build the project. We design it, if the customer is looking to build it at the end of the day. We don't design only for the most part. We do it every now and then, but that's not our core. Then just going down like two more steps that I think when I'm trying changes, it's also the complexity of the process. Sometimes changing something is just not worth the effort, right? It's like, hey, it's okay, it's not perfect, kind of works. Could it be better? Yes, but changing it is gonna require retraining and retooling and making a bunch of mistakes in the process for maybe weeks or months. Sometimes it's just not even worth it. So with that in mind, then I just prioritize based on impact and complexity. And obviously I prioritize those that have a high impact, low complexity. Those are the ones that are like approved. Let's start like now.
Yeah.
Right? And then you go down the list to the more complex ones, that they take a lot of more effort from the team.
Do you find that there's a difference in how you're able to manage and make changes in processes and people in the office, like design staff and admin staff versus outside in
Yeah,
maintenance and install? Is there a big
yeah.
discrepancy there?
There is some discrepancy, I would say, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but usually in an office setting, there's way more opinions of how things should be, right? And those are really hard to manage or reconcile. And some of those are really good opinions, and it kind of goes to the core that when you gain something, you lose something. So every time we're changing something, yes, we're gonna gain something, but we're likely leaving something on the table that was good about the previous process, right? That's always, and there's people that are attached about that old version, or they have been used to it, or they just are tired for change. We do have some. We take a very close look now at change fatigue. At the beginning, it was like my new toy. I was just changing everything, right? And that resulted in change fatigue for my team. I'm taking it slower, even though I want to make a lot of changes. I have an inventory, and I do a few at a time. I don't try to change everything at the same time. In the field, it's just they just have less opinions, and I don't know if that's good or bad, or if it's just a communication style. But you go there and you talk to them, and they usually embrace it very quickly. So that's what I found.
So you're able to implement changes a lot faster with a lot less pushback in the field.
Yeah, and it's more tangible. The thing with the field is also they're working with in the physical world. They're like, hey, let's build walls this way, and it's just physical, and it's easier to understand, and it's less controversial versus
Right.
how should we approach a customer? Should we
Right.
ask them to meet first, or we do a Zoom meeting first, or do we just meet them in person, or do you have a phone call? Like, and they all have pros and cons, and it's less tangible, and so it makes it a little bit more complicated to do it in an office setting.
Well, and I think designers get kind of stuck in their ways, and when you start changing their process, it's like messing with their creativity. So you probably get some pushback there.
Yes, I do.
Um, so as far as like you mentioned Alan and Julie, obviously they're the previous owners of Classic, and they have an unbelievable wealth of knowledge and experience in the industry. Keeping them on staff to help in this transition, I imagine, has some great benefits, but I wonder how all of you have dealt with kind of that growing pains, and undoubtedly a bit of an awkward transition as responsibility of roles kind of change and shifts, and maybe it's kind of an evolution. If you don't mind speaking to kind of
Yeah,
how you
totally.
guys have worked through that.
I think a lot of people assume that these like ownership transitions are tough, and I think they assume right that those most likely are very difficult. But I think I was very lucky that we're Alan and Julie and me, they were very aligned on many things, and we have been very respectful on each other's position. They obviously had the experience of running the landscape industry. I had all the new ideas, and just some of which are not good ideas, but ideas regardless. And we were just very respectful about understanding each other and having a really good communication from the very beginning. Even before taking over the company, we had a lot of on the negotiation part. There's a lot of soft discussions you go over during a negotiation that is not just about the number or the date or all the more like legal stuff. So I just count as one of my blessings that I think I got lucky with Alan and Julie and their commitment to transition Classic to new ownership, and doing it in a very, they were just committed to making it work, right? Frankly, they were like, they're gonna make it work. There were moments where I think they sacrificed a few things. I mean, they have sold for a reason, and 2 years into this, they're still they're still kind of supporting our company and our organization. I think we have a really good working relationship, but just a good amount of humility and integrity on both sides. That just really goes a very long way on having a good transition of ownership.
Do you think that because they've been through this before, because they're not the first owners of Classic, that helped in making this transition because they've been on both sides of it now?
You know what? I think, as a matter of fact, I think it made it more difficult
Okay.
because it all depends on your experience. And Alan and Julie, when they bought Classic almost 20 years ago, they didn't have a very good experience. So they came in to it with some hesitancy and maybe some distrust about this young guy that is coming from tech, and we have all these stereotypes about tech people, right? So I'm sure there was some distrust that make that a little bit complicated at the beginning, but I think once we got to know each other, things really started to flow. And once it's like building any team. Like once you start building that trust and you trust each other, things just make it a lot easier. But I think it was the opposite in this specific scenario.
What about some of the processes and systems that were in place at Classic? Are there any in particular that you really loved and wanted to keep?
Not at the beginning, but I have come to really love a few that I mean, one of the things we do very differently at Classic is what we call a proposal first. Even before we design, we give the customer the full cost of their project, just by going talking to them, understanding what they need. And it works more, it's less of a bid and more of a budget. Say, hey, like, are you comfortable with this budget that we're going to allocate for this amount of rock, this amount of work, this amount of lawn, this area, this element here, this element there? Is I came to learn. For me, I just came into the industry, and that's the only method I've known. But going after some time, I learned that that's very unique and not very uncommon and counterintuitive for most designers, since most designers design first and then they kind of go into the bidding process. I really like that one. It's just what I have learned is that one of the major constraints for customers is budget, right? Is how much actually they have to spend, and it's really hard to design and know the budget as you're designing. So it kind of yields a lot of when we do design first, it tends to yield a lot of the surprises at the end. Oh, this is a beautiful design, but it costs twice as much that you want to spend. I'm like, oh, and then you have to go back into the drawing board, and it just makes it a little bit more complicated. And it works great for our business. Definitely, this is not a system and process that works for every business. But given our target market and the type of customer we're trying to address, it definitely works for us. The other one that has not pretty much changed at all is how we schedule projects. The only thing that has changed about it is now digital. It used to be a whiteboard that we just kind of had all this stuff with a Sharpie, and I just changed that to a screen. And what that helps us is now we have one single source of truth, because on that screen pretty much is showing what I changed on my phone. If someone changes in the office or changes the calendar from home, like it's just like real time, what's the change, rather than in the past you were talking to a customer, you were at home, then you can come in next Monday or next morning to fix it, but someone else in the interim has already grabbed that spot you were gonna put the customer in, and it just kind of created all this lag and latency in the information. But those two things and many others really are still intact at Classic. Again, under the principle that if it's not broken and it's kind of doing the job that it's supposed to accomplish, like why change it, right? It's just a lot of work.
What systems did you find had the most opportunity for growth and expansion and change?
That's a really good question. I mean, I have made a lot of changes on just technology integration, and how we talk to customers. The most recent one that I have doubled down is on our CRM, our customer relationship manager. It's kind of this, we use Soho, and that's how we handle the information of our customers, right? And it used to be in the past just a doc. It was used more like a contact list. Like, I mean, you have the information there for the customer. Yes, we track a little, like a few data points here and there, but we were not really tracking what are the opportunity size, which opportunities are closer to actually signing, and the size of the deals that we're like trying to pursue, who have been closing more than others, who has a higher close rate with smaller jobs versus who has a higher close rate with larger jobs. And all that analytics has been helping us a lot as management to be more strategic on where we focus our energy, rather than trying to do everything. regardless of the importance, we have been able to focus on, oh, these are the three very high probability opportunities we want to focus and go and kind of close this week or this month, right, with the customer and just get them on the books. So that's something that required a lot of work. And also just the planning, something that I just changed a few months ago is we used to go into our week and put a lot of effort. And then by Saturday, we just like look back and see, all right, what did we accomplish? And sometimes it was good, sometimes it wasn't that good. It was just very inconsistent. So what I implemented about 6 months ago is on Fridays for the following week, we have a very detailed game plan that I call. We have a game plan of what exactly we're going to accomplish next week. We want to finish this job, and we want to finish the wall in this other customer, and we want to finish the gravel path here and deliver the materials, and be very clear about what is the definition of a good week before the week starts, right? Not after. All right. So that's something that has been very transformational, and just keeps the team really focused on what are we trying to accomplish next week, and it gives a lot of clarity, and I think people like it. Obviously not at the beginning because change is not always fun. I don't think at the beginning everyone liked it, but I think now it has grown on people and they see the value of going through that exercise, and I would say that has helped us a lot over the past 6 months.
Nice. Well, and I think that that's a really valuable just productivity tool. And it also is nice to have that more instant feedback loop of what went well for the week, what was accomplished, what needs to go on next week's list while it's still fresh, instead of after the weekend trying to remember what missed the mark the week before.
Yes, and what I tell my team is like, let's be intentional about our week. I mean, let's start a week with our intention. Our intention is to finish this project, right? Rather than let's just do a lot of work and see what happens. Right?
Yeah.
But usually when you don't have a plan, what I saw is everyone was super busy. There's a lot of fires to put down at any given point on every business. And you can get very easily distracted from what we're trying to accomplish for the week, right? So that has helped a lot. And I have a slide every week, and everyone knows, and we're on the same page. We all agree to it. We commit to it, and it's not optional. At the beginning was like, well, that would be nice to have for the week. Like, no, this is a commitment. Like, we are committing to accomplish this by Friday. And sometimes things go south. If it does, just let me know and see if I can help course correct. And if it's not possible, that's fine.
Yeah.
At least we tried, right?
No week runs perfectly.
Exactly. No week, not in construction, at least.
Yeah.
Not in construction. That's the only thing that's constant is that it's not going to be constant.
Yeah, right. For sure.
Right.
So as far as like for future, what is your future vision for the company?
So we have so we are working very actively on over the past year on being very intentional about our culture and our mission as a company. And we want to be more intentional about our ecological practices for Classic. We have been an ecological inspired and centric company for many years, but not very intentional about really trying to push the services that will make the best for our community. That's one end. And then on the other, more business side, like once we have a very strong mission that I believe and the rest of our team believes in, that is good for our community, is just pretty scaling it up, right? Maybe being able to serve all of the Puget Sound in the next few years with our services. But we're working very actively on having a very defined and clear construction standards, very fine and clear what we do and what we don't do, right? I mean, recently we have taken a stance that we're just not going to do any artificial turf. Like, we just don't do it, right? I understand the benefits and the convenience for some of our customers, but we're just not going to do it. We're going to provide them with alternatives to that. to their solution, really understand their solution, their problem they're to solve, and provide them with something different than artificial turf. And so that's our vision is to once we have the right mission with the right product, once we have the right culture and employment, where employment, not service, I call it employment as a service, but it's more as a good employment and work environment for all of our team. At that point, it's just about expanding the benefit to a larger regional area. But we're working actively on the first two before we get very aggressive on our expansion plans.
What do you foresee as the biggest challenge in being able to, as you very well know, hiring and finding good people is challenging. What do you see as the biggest hurdle in being able to scale to the point that you're looking for?
I mean, as you say, it's people. It's people and culture. We have been. I've used one of my heritage as from in Mexico, and my Hispanic heritage has been very handy in this industry. And in terms of field employees, it's very easy for us to find the labor to kind of get the jobs done. We're connected to our Mexican and Hispanic community, and we can find good people that are skilled and are consistent, and that they show up, right? Which tends to be a problem. They show up to work. What we're also, on the other hand, is our design staff, right? They have a very distinct need of having a place where they can express their creativity and just find that fulfillment on what they do. The challenge there is that has to be has to come together with actually generating enough volume of work so that it's sustainable for the business long term, right? And that's usually they're usually in tension because, as you know, like creativity centric jobs, they're not linear, right? They're not like, I'm just gonna do 10 designs per week and I can just churn through them. Like sometimes you just have to stop and think, and it's different, and it's a little bit harder to do that with design. But the way I'm tackling that is through just having a very strong culture that we mentor and we grow. We try to have that mentorship and apprenticeship very active in our day-to-day activities. And hopefully that's appealing enough for designers to come and join Classic if they want to learn and grow. That's kind of what we're looking for as well. Someone that wants to learn and grow. Not everyone wants to do that, right? But yeah, that's kind of the limitation is just finding the people. As with any business, finding the right people and having the right culture, that's kind of usually the main hurdle.
Have you found that there's, or maybe it's an evolving kind of understanding, but like a designer to crew like ratio to be able to keep, enough designers to keep enough production of designs coming through the office to keep a certain number of crews busy? Is there like a ratio that you've found? Or
yeah, our target ratio is one designer for every 2 crews. That's our target ratio. Kind of changes. I mean, in pandemic years, that was pretty easy to sustain. There was just so much demand and everyone was signing everything that was not even a problem. This year has been a little bit softer, and we may be a little bit under that 2-to-1 ratio. But I mean, it's not a fix. It kind of changes, and also changes based on the size of the projects. If you're starting to do like larger projects, one project on its own can be doing 2 crews. Like you can be assigning 2 crews to a project if it's large enough, right? Versus doing a lot of the small stuff. So it depends, but I would say somewhere between 1.5 to 2 crews per designers. That's kind of the ratio that we want to keep ourselves. How
many designers do you have on staff now?
We have 6 designers.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yes. It's I'm really proud of our team right now. I think we have the most talented and the best team I have ever had since joining Classic. So I'm pretty excited about these years and the years to come. I think we have been able to attract and retain very talented people that are very committed and that have embraced our method really, because I know that it's a little bit of a tough sell when we have go to a designer and hey, you're gonna do a proposal, no plan.
Yeah.
Everyone starts to freak out. Like, how am I supposed to do that? Like, well, there's six others and many others that have gone through Classic that have learned it. And
Do
it
you
takes a little bit of a relearning of it, right?
do you find that that's harder for newer designers that don't have as much knowledge and experience with the budget piece of it?
Yes, totally. It tends to be a challenge for the more junior designers. My assumption is, and I mean, I'm an engineer, so I also kind of grew up in this design and build for mechanical parts, not for landscape. But that's just how they teach it in school, right? You just design, it makes sense, and then you bid. That's great from an academic point of view because now you have all the parameters to be able to kind of put a proposal together.
Right.
But from a business point of view, the most important parameter is budget, and and it's just not there in the design, right? So it's not usually. So it's very challenging, and it's also challenging to for designers. The other component, especially the junior ones, is going in a proposal first tends to need a little bit of a customer management angle to it because you will miss on the budget every now and then. Every
Yeah.
now and then you're gonna say, "Hey, this is gonna take me 5 yards of mulch," and then guess what? It takes 10. And then what do? And then you have to kind of be able to kind of bridge that gap with the customer, right? And like, hey,
Right.
we need 10, but you know what? I overbid a little bit on the rock here, so we're gonna take some of the budget from the rock and we're gonna put it here. Or sometimes it's just like a total miss, and you have to go to the customer and kind of manage that. So that tends to be a very uncomfortable conversation, especially for someone more junior in their
Right.
career, right? So that's intimidating, and we coach our designers on how to handle those difficult conversations that happen every now and then, right?
Well, and having that ability to have enough support staff and other designers around you, I'm sure helps to be able to kind of troubleshoot and work through, what the best way to have that conversation is when those things arise.
Yeah, and then we have, again, going back to having Alan and Julie, I mean, and sometimes it just gets escalated to Alan, and Alan just have to go and step in and kind of solve it. And then when Alan can solve it, then it comes to me. And when it comes to me, pretty much is that recommendation, hey, we're going to have to eat the cost. And that's it, right? There's
Yeah, if it
nothing.
escalates that far.
Yeah, it escalates that far. Usually not a good signal when it gets to me.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a problem. But yeah, it's a different design motion that is not very intuitive. But if you ask most of our designers, some of them may say, "Hey, I would still prefer to design first," but they understand why it makes more sense and it's more valuable for our business model to do it that way. So they see value in it.
Well, it saves their time, it saves the client's time. I mean, there's nothing more discouraging as a designer than to design something that you love that's beautiful that can't get installed.
Yes, yes, and then working a lot for free. I mean,
Yeah.
we're doing all this work, and then at the end, after, well, we're not going to build it. Or so what we say to our customers is, hey, this is an estimate. We can with this budget, we can work around to make it work for you. We're not going to force you to install it if at the end of the day we do a design that you don't like. We're not going to force it on you. But if you're committed at that point, like we're here for you. How many times you want to design? What do you want to change the design? What discussion do you want to have about our plans? Do you want to go to our nursery and talk to our nursery manager about our plans? Do you want to look about materials? Do you need samples? At that point, once we have their commitment and when we know they're committed to build with us, like now we can dedicate all the time to them. And that once you get customers over that hump, it's a much better experience for them as well because they get the full attention from our team.
Wonderful. Well, one last question before I let you go.
Mhm.
What do you like most about the landscape industry? What do you find the most inspiring? What do you see like where your passions are really pushing you as far as the landscape industry goes?
Yeah, I mean, I as I mentioned, I like just being outdoor a little bit more than I used to, and having almost 15 years of my career in corporate and working with very, I would say, in some instances, kind of aggressive, competitive kind of scenarios. It's just very refreshing to come into the landscape industry. And yes, people are excited about there's some competition, but it tends to be very healthy, very friendly, and you meet some very cool people, very interesting people to me that I have learned so much about horticulture, plants, and what you name it. Like even a lot of our staff being in a more creative kind of personality, they tend to travel a lot more. They travel not just to nice places, they actually travel to very authentic places. They're very curious about it. So that is kind of the profile that I have found to be super interesting in our landscape industry here in the Northwest, at least. Everyone's super interesting to me, and just talking to them is there's always something I learn from them. So that's pretty cool.
Nice. Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for joining me. And I look forward to hearing and seeing more as Classic evolves and grows and all of that.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me, Chrissy. And yeah, we'll be in touch.
All right. A couple key takeaways from my conversation with Rodrigo. I really loved how he said that booked is not always profitable. And he talks a lot about efficiency and putting processes in place that really prioritize that efficiency. And I think that that's great. And then also thinking about the cost of making changes and really evaluating if you've got a process that's working, what the cost in both time and lack of productivity and getting people on board, especially with larger teams. If you're a solopreneur, you can make changes without it costing as much, but sometimes there is a cost to making changes. And then lastly, but not least, for sure, the end of the week meetings to close out the week strong and really recap and prioritize for the following week. You can find more about Classic Nursery and Rodrigo at classicnursery.com, and they're on social media at Classic Nursery. As I close out this episode, I feel like it answered many questions, but left even more questions open for those of us in business as solopreneurs or very small design teams. Rodrigo's situation is a common one amongst the design build industry. Companies like that have tangible assets and larger volume of employees to have a business value capable of being bought and sold. The question that is left unanswered is what about us that don't have a business value beyond our skills? How do we exit this business? If I, as a business owner, am the primary asset of my business, I can't sell my value if I don't plan to remain in the business. There's no business to be sold. That may be years or decades away for some of you, as it is for me, but it's still a riddle worthy of exploring and figuring out how to get out before we find ourselves on the doorstep to retirement with no idea how to transition out. For me, I don't want to see what I've spent so many years building just die and cease to exist when I retire. But how do I do that? I don't know. If you do or know someone who does, reach out. I would love to be able to share that experience with everyone. To wrap up, I want to thank you for your time. I hope the ideas discussed today have left you feeling excited and energized. As I build both my business and my life, I value the support and feedback you provide. I would love for you to reach out to me to let me know what you think, give me ideas, or just to connect. Please don't forget to subscribe and also share with a friend. Until next time, go create something wonderful.